This week on Outdoor Oklahoma, we're talking locavores. And no, that's not some kind of new insect migrating up from South America. It's actually a growing movement having a positive effect on hunting and fishing numbers. We'll also be cooking up an easy wild game dish that'll leave your mouth watering for a taste. From the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation, Outdoor Oklahoma. Well, hello and welcome to Outdoor Oklahoma. I'm Todd, Craighead. There's a relatively new term growing in popularity nowadays, and well, if you haven't heard of it yet, you soon will. It's locavore, and the idea centers on using and shopping locally. The term's actually finding its way into hunting and fishing conversations. After all, it's no surprise, us hunters and anglers are really kind of the ultimate and original locavores. This movement is actually gaining a lot of momentum by attracting locavores to hunting and fishing. Today, we're going to introduce you to a fellow that's found his way at the center of this locavore conversation, Hank Shaw. Hank is an accomplished author, a celebrity chef, maintains a popular website, and is a highly sought after guest speaker all over the country.
Most interesting things about the hunting and fishing world right now is that you have these two different groups that are taking part in the pursuit, and they're starting to get to know each other. There's this much larger traditional hunting and angling community, and there's this new but growing and I would say influential group that are, you can call them adult onset hunters, you can call them locavore hunters or whatever, but they're coming out of specifically to eat. And they tend to be either urban or people who came from rural areas or from a family that hunted, but they never did, or they did as a kid and they left it and now they're picking it back up again because they now see a reason to do it. And what's interesting is that particular set. So let's say it's somebody who grew up in Oklahoma in a hunting family. She now lives in the Bay Area of California. She never really hunted much. Maybe she did as a young teen with her dad, and she left it when she found boys. This happens all the time. And then now she's 27, 26, and she's like, there's a reason for me to go duck hunting in California or salmon fishing or whatever. And so she's picking it up, and she's taking her friends with her. And she, you just use this fictitious person as an example, but they're real people, and I meet them all the time. She is the liaison between, say, her family in Oklahoma and all her hipster friends. And what's interesting is people like that are bringing these two very disparate groups of people together, and they're finding that they have something very, very powerful in common, and that's a good thing.
Hank has to have one of the most colorful backgrounds of anyone we've ever had here on Outdoor Oklahoma. It's quite a leap going from newspaper reporter to celebrity chef. And although maybe Hank's career has allowed him to rub shoulders with some of the world's most influential people, he still never lost track of his roots.
I come from, an urban environment. I come from, high-flying political stuff, and I covered presidential races and Congress and all that kind of garbage, and I was a professional restaurant cook. So I have this kind of some people give me a reputation of, I'm elitist, right? Not really, right? Because I drink Budweiser and eat barbecue and eat at Stuckey's just like everybody else does. But I like both kinds of that world, and it's what I'm trying to get across with that is that real honest food is not just in fancy places. One of the jobs I had when I was in restaurants was cutting fish all day long. I used to cut fish for 8 hours a day, and I'll put my fish cooking up against anybody's. But game has been relatively new, and it started in 2002. I was living in Minnesota, and my best friend at the newspaper I was working at, he was the outdoor writer, and he kept bringing me mallards and wood ducks and pheasants and a piece of deer, right? So I'm like, yeah, you see what you can do with that. And I was hooked immediately, because from a cook's perspective, all of these ingredients are very, very special. And a pheasant's not a chicken. A mallard is not a Pekin duck that you buy in the supermarket. And all of these wild versions of foods that I had had before, but they were denser, firmer, more real.
What's obvious about Hank when you first meet him is a passion to help people realize that cooking wild game doesn't have to be hard or intimidating.
I think the way to get people into it right at the get-go is to learn a couple of easy techniques with the money cuts, like duck breast, venison backstrap, backstraps of a wild pig, an elk tenderloin, the stuff that's easy to cook. Those are all cuts that you don't want to overcook. So, like a duck breast, the way I describe a duck breast is it's your favorite steak, only it's wearing a hat made of bacon. I mean, that skin and that little bit of layer of fat, you cook it perfectly, it's not hard. When you get it, which takes you maybe 2 times, 3 times to get it nailed, it's magical.
That just sounds great. Coming up next, what do you say we actually do a little Locavore style cooking? We're going to visit the kitchen of Curtis and Gay Ann Grace. Now, if you've ever been to our Wildlife Expo in September, well, you've no doubt smelled and hopefully tasted the incredible dishes that the Graces prepare at the Dutch oven cooking area. Well, as it turns out, they know their way around more than just a campfire.
We always think of the beautiful springtime with when the red buds bud, the sand bass run, it's turkey season, and you find those wonderful morel mushrooms. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to braid our bacon. This is hickory smoked thick sliced bacon. You'll start with 6 pieces on the bottom, and then we'll end up weaving them all together to give us the braided look. I like to put mine kind of close together, and that way when they do cook and they shrink up, that it looks very, very nice. Very, very nice presentation. Now you can also try this with maple flavored bacon or peppered bacon, the different varieties. This piece of paper underneath is called parchment paper, and we like to cook on parchment paper because it can collect the juices during the baking process, and then you can rebase those juices on top of your meat to keep it moist and flavorful, and plus it has a nice shine to it at the end. So there is our braid, and now what we have to do is we have to use some cooking twine that can be purchased, and we're going to cut 3 strips of these about the width of your parchment paper. Okay. And then we're going to lay those across the bacon braid. Now to get that reversed, we just put a second piece of parchment paper over the top of it, and I'm going to press that down a little bit because I'm going to take this and I'm just going to flip it over, and that way my cooking string is on the bottom and my bacon braid is on the top. And press it out, peel your parchment paper. There we go. I'm going to get this is the wild turkey breast that has been from the field and put in the freezer and unthawed, and now he's going to take it and prepare it for our delicious entree here.
Now this is actually a half of a turkey breast, so if you want to do the same thing, and most folks when they shoot a wild turkey, they either have it plucked or they will de-breast it in 2 pieces like this one. We're going to take this Carter knife, we're going to flatten this out, we'll fit in and around this bacon. So just, if you have one at home, most men use it for putting in steaks. We get this meat flattened out, tenderized. I think we're about ready to do this.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to place that meat over there to see how it kind of forms into the square. Now, I'm going to put the seasonings on there, huh?
So we're going to take some Head Country seasoning and some Penzey's 4S seasoning, and we're going to sprinkle them on the top of the meat, and add a little bit of the Penzey's 4S. So we've got our wild mushrooms, morel mushrooms, we've got our sweet onions, and we have the bacon braided, and we have the wild turkey breast on top of there, seasoned with a little bit of Head Country and 4S seasoning. And now we're ready to place this on top. So what Curtis and I like to do is we also like to add a little bit more seasoning on top and sprinkle. So I'm going to add a little bit more Head Country, sprinkle it on top, and a little bit more 4S. And now we have it, and it's ready to be folded and then tied and then placed in our Dutch oven. Going to let the parchment paper work with you whenever you're using parchment paper to bake with, or even when you're using it to do breads, roll out your breads. Folding it over. That was a fast move, force of gravity here. Now I'm going to let Curtis, he's going to tie him. You don't want to tie him real tight because it is going to be cooking while the meat's cooking. The strings are going to be holding it together. Very good. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to place it inside of the Dutch oven. And I put the parchment paper in there with it, and so that as it cooks, those juices collect in there and we can rebaste it. I'm going to carry it into there so you can see. In the Dutch oven. We want to take the kitchen scissors and we want to clip the excess parchment paper away. Now whether you're doing this in a household kitchen or if you're doing it outdoors, it works the same way. Fits into nicely into a 12-inch Dutch oven as well. This will cook at 350 degrees. And you want it to reach 165 internal temp, which takes about an hour and a half for that to happen. Now we're going to venture into the oven and check on the one that we had made prior to the filming. Oh my. If only you could smell this through the cameras. Oh, delicious. And we're going to slosh up some of that nice broth coming off of that turkey and put it on the top. Oh boy, it looks delicious. I'm going to go ahead and take a temp reading. This one has been in the oven for approximately 45 minutes. It has reached temp. And so what we're going to do is leave the lid off, and we're going to get the bacon a little crispy, and so we'll return it to the oven for a short time. We fixed some bacon braided stuffed wild turkey breast. We stuffed it with some sweet onion and some morel mushrooms. Oh wow, look at that. If only the camera, you could smell through those cameras.
Man, what I wouldn't give for another serving of that right now. I told you the Graces knew what they were doing, and you can see and taste for yourself at this year's Wildlife Expo. Now let's catch back up with Hank for some more tips on working with waterfowl and venison.
So there's a couple of real key things that you need to remember when you're cooking venison or waterfowl or upland game birds. The first is with venison or duck breast, don't overcook it. Your venison backstrap or duck breast should be cooked exactly like a steak. However you like your steak, cook your duck breast or your goose breast or your venison backstrap like that. The second tip is with birds, break them down. One of the hardest cooking tricks there is to cook a whole roast whatever perfectly. Now everybody can do it okay, but to do it perfectly, that's tricky. It's so much easier to break your birds down and do the legs and wings in one batch, crock pot, braised, soup, whatever, and then the breast, again, like a steak, or if it's a case of like a pheasant, cook it till it has a blush of pink. You don't need to cook the heck out of it. Just a little, cook like sort of medium rare is what you want. That's another tip that not a lot of people know. A little bit of pink, not rare like a steak, but somewhere like pork, like you like your pork. Last tip, don't ever grind venison. Let me do that, I'll have to edit that one. Don't ever grind venison shanks again. I know it's counterintuitive, but right, this is whitetail country, so the shanks on deer are about that long. It is perfect for an ossobuco or a slow braise, and there's so much connective tissue in shanks that it will kill your grinder and it'll drive you insane if you try to cut all the silver skin out. Don't bother, cook it slow and low in moist heat and it'll fall off the bone. You'll actually think it's one of the best pieces of the venison.
Hank is a great resource for learning how to cook wild game. He's authored 2 popular books, one being Duck, Duck, Goose and his other Hunt, Gather, Cook, both very popular with the Locavore movement. He also maintains an extensive website on the subject.
My website is Hunter, Angler, Gardener, Cook, and I think now it's the largest source of wild food recipes on the internet. And I've got almost 1,000 recipes on the site, and it's everything. I mean, it's everything from fish to game to wild plants to mushrooms to some unusual garden vegetables as well. I mean, I do actually still have a garden. And the goal of the site is to help people work with what they bring home better. So I'm constantly doing experiments with ducks or venison or wild pigs, catfish, that kind of thing. And so it's a recipe site, but it's more than that. There's a lot of technique. There's a lot of just good information of what to do with whatever it is that you bring home. And I've written 2 books, and this is the latest one. And I wrote Duck, Duck, Goose because I live in Northern California, and I probably do more duck hunting than anything else. When I'm not traveling, I'm in the marsh at least 30 days a year. You get intimate with something if you cook it that much. And I've cooked all kinds of species, and ducks and geese, and there's a huge amount of knowledge that I wanted to pass on that not everybody has. But beyond that, I probably cooked 1,000 store-bought ducks in restaurants before I ever touched a gun. So this book is not just for hunters. It's store-bought and wild birds, and it's there's a difference in store-bought birds between like a Muscovy duck and a pekin duck. Just the same way there's a difference between a Canada goose and a speckled-bellied goose. And if you know the differences, you can treat them in the ways that they need to be treated to make them shine. And this is totally, it's the sum total of what I've picked up over the years, both professionally and in the field.
Well, I hope that we've inspired you to maybe take a leap of faith, so to speak, and discover how easy and practical cooking with wild game really is. After all, hunters and anglers are the ultimate locavores. If you're looking for additional help, the OSU Extension Service has a great resource for you. It's a free DVD called Wild Game Food Safety Venison. Pick up a copy at your local county extension office. Here's a little preview.
Good morning. I'm Gene Parker, veterinarian with Oklahoma State University Cooperative Extension Service. We're out here this morning. I've been watching a group of does move out of this oak timber, eating these acorns, moving down to this pond each morning. We're here today to hopefully harvest one of these does and then also show the technique and describe the process of field dressing deer in such a way that we optimize food safety and prevent any contamination at the critical points.
An option to home processing is to take the deer to a commercial locker plant. You need to deliver the clean carcass to the processor as quickly as possible, especially if the outside air temperature is above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This carcass has been washed and chilled already. Processing begins by removing the front legs by cutting between the shoulder blade and the rib cage.
Venison is very tasty, and a lot of people in Oklahoma really like it, but it's different than buying meat at the supermarket because nobody has checked to make sure that this meat is safe. So you have a lot more responsibility to make sure you maintain the safety of the meat.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. For other great recipes like the Graces today, check out our Outdoor Oklahoma channel on YouTube. For all of us at your Wildlife Department, I'm Todd Craighead, and we'll see you right here next time on Outdoor Oklahoma.